This first question comes with an explanation, and so it's a little bit lengthy, but let me read it. In Disciplines of a Godly Woman by Barbara Hughes uses this quote from Wayne Grudem. It is the Father that planned redemption and sent his Son into the world. The Son obeyed the Father, accomplishing redemption for us. And the Spirit brings completion the work that has been planned by the Father and begun by the Son. The Father directs and has authority over the Son, and the Son obeys and is responsive to the direction of the Father. The Holy Spirit is obedient to the directives of both Father and the Son. So these women go on to say, we discussed this in our women's Bible study and could not come to a consensus about what he meant. From this quote alone, it sounds like Grudem is describing the Trinity as a hierarchy, yet we know that the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit are equal in deity, but different in function. You're absolutely right. That's a good explanation. We think the author may have pulled this quote of context as we were going over the disciplines of marriage. Can you shed light on this? Well, first of all, I just want to say, how much I'm thankful for this group. Here they are. They see an illustration used describing the Trinity. And of course, it causes them to stop and ponder and think and meditate and to think theologically. And as your pastor, I want you to know I appreciate that very much. You also make this statement where you say, we discussed this week in our women's Bible study and we could not come to consensus, but it seems like you came to this understanding that the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are equal in deity, but yet different in function. And that's really the answer to your question, is that there is, I want to be careful how I use this word. There is a submission within the Godhead. In other words, they are equal in essence, but there is a distinct difference in their roles. So, for example, to say that the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are equal in essence is to say that all three persons of the Godhead are fully God. Okay? But yet, that does not negate the fact that they have very distinct roles. So in his role, Christ is under the authority of the Father. That's why we see Jesus praying to the Father. That's why we see Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane saying, nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. And then the Spirit as well. He is equal in essence. The Holy Spirit is fully God. He is the third person of the triune Godhead, but he too is under the authority of both Father and Son. And so when we say that the Son is in submission to the Father and the Spirit is submission into the Father and the Son, it's speaking primarily of their function, the roles in which they carry out, not their essence, not their deity. And so I believe that just in your statement, you pretty much answered that question for yourself. So great thinking, and I hope that helps to affirm to the conclusion that it appears that perhaps you already came to. So thank you for your question. I love those kind of questions. By the way, let me give you a book, a reference. This is a book, and really this is to my first question, folks, who asked me about the submission within the Godhead. This is a book called Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, Relationships, Roles, and Relevance by Bruce Ware. Bruce Ware is the Senior Associate Dean and Professor of Christian Theology at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky. And so it's a great book. I've read this book several times myself, not just once, but several times. I use it as a reference, a go-to in sermon preparation if I'm preaching on the Trinity. And so I would highly encourage you to get this book and read it. The Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, Relationships, Roles, and Relevance by Bruce Ware. He actually has a whole section on here concerning submission with the Godhead. And then let me also say this. I think using the Trinity as an example of submission is appropriate when teaching about submission within marriage. I mean, even Christ models submission unto the Father, and the Spirit models submission unto the Father and the Son. So how much more should we model submission within the marriage? The husband submitting to God by loving his wife as Christ loved the church. But there's also in that submission to loving Christ, or to loving your wife, there's also a submission unto her. You're submitting to Christ to love your wife as Christ loved the church, but you're also demonstrating that by loving her as Christ loved the church. And the wife in response is to live in submission unto her husband as unto the Lord. And so really it's about the man meeting her needs and the woman meeting his needs. And when we meet each other's needs, then our needs get met. And that's the beauty of submission, which was modeled within the Godhead.